Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, I'm Hilary Dickman. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Admission for Marketing and Communications at Colorado College, and I'm also a parent of 2 college students.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of 2 daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a wellness coach at the Keenan Flagler Business School at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. This week in the news, Hilary talks about changes going on in file reading when it comes to using artificial intelligence, AI, in admissions. She gives us a report from her visit to the Slate conference to learn about all their new features when it comes to AI and college admissions. We continue our interview with Daniel Chambliss, author of the book, How College Works, with part 3 of 4. And Lisa lets us know about her experience on a trip with college counselors to St. Michael's College in Colchester, Vermont. Listen and enjoy.
And now it's time for Hot Topics in the News.
Hi, Hilary.
Hi, I have my Slate printout here from all of the new features that were released during Slate Summit. So you might hear me paging through it while we're talking about kind of my experience at Slate Summit and what I learned about, especially the new AI features that are being released.
Yeah, so I've been talking with Hilary for a while about how AI is being used in admissions. And while we've talked about it on the podcast, this is a place that things are changing so quickly.
Oh my gosh, so fast.
I feel like we need to come and visit this every 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was talking with her about, what, you want to do a segment on it? And she's like, well, I'm going to Slate and they're supposed to be having some sessions on that. So I'll take great notes. And so that's what today is. We just want you to kind of hear some of the things that Hilary heard at Slate. Now, I'll say this before you get into it. I've talked to 3 senior level admissions people in the last month on this topic. Mm-hmm. And I brought up what happened at Slate. I said I wasn't there, but I've heard. Mm-hmm. And all 3 of them were like, well, we'll see what gets implemented. Like Slate talks about a lot of things when you go to the conference, and not all of them trickle down to actually getting implemented.
Well, and some of them are implemented, but you have the choice whether or not to switch them on in your own Slate instance. Sure. So Slate is the database, the CRM tool that most, I would say probably most colleges. There are some who are still who haven't moved over yet, but I don't understand how they read applications without it.
Well, Hilary, when I was at NACAC in LA last year, I was Slate always has like, they're one of the biggest. There's a couple of people, College Vine, Slate, that have like this massive. Mm-hmm. Well, they drop like, seriously, some of them like $250,000 they spend just to put this big. So they're staffed with all these people. So I like to talk to them. And I said, I was talking to someone pretty high up. I can't remember their title, but they're one of those up there people. And I said, yeah, I hear you guys have 1,600 colleges now. And they're like, 1,900, not 1,600.
Wow.
And that was a year ago. So they may be over 2,000 now.
Yeah. It's a really great platform for us. Some schools use Salesforce instead. And I've read applications in Salesforce for a scholarship program, and it's just, compared to Slate, it's sort of clunky. I know Salesforce is awesome for a lot of things. It's just not made for higher ed, right? And Slate is made just for higher ed. So they have platforms for admission and advancement and like counseling, advising, that kind of thing. I think we don't have it in our advancement office or in advising at CC, but we are all in on the admission side. And I think because Matt is like an early adopter person, we were sort of early adopters in the Slate space. One of the really cool things is that we are still paying the same for Slate as we were when we adopted it in 2000, whatever it was, 8 or something. Slate has not yet raised their prices. So I think if you adopt Slate now, you're paying a higher rate than we were paying because we were early adopters. But they haven't raised the prices on anybody, which is super fascinating that they've been able to do that, and we're really grateful for that.
Yeah, their customer service model is
Mhm.
fascinating. People might want to check out and go hear Alexander Clark, the founder. He's a
He is such a
fascinating
character.
Yeah,
Oh
and
my
like
gosh.
kind of like a child prodigy. Like he created a system for his middle school
Yeah.
that they adopted when he was in the seventh
Yep.
grade.
Yep.
He
Yeah.
started Slate when he
He
was at
is.
Yale, and
Yep.
he's
Such
really
a fascinaning guy.
yes,
He's such like a performer. He loves to be on stage and
yeah,
like making a big show. So Slate Summit was in Las Vegas, which was perfect for someone who loves to be on
sure.
stage and be a performer. And it was just really fun getting to see him kind of be his full self and just yeah,
Was this your
so
first time
interesting to
going?
watch. This was my first time.
Did
Yeah,
they
I've
have
heard.
all
I
the
mean,
bells
he's
and
Alexander is
whistles
sort
like they're
of
known
legendary.
for? They always
Of
like
course.
all the
Yeah.
flash and all that stuff.
Oh
They
my
had all
gosh. And
yeah,
and the Slate mascot is a shark. And so Alexander's like riding around the conference on this little motorcycle that has like that's a shark. He was like sitting on the back of a shark riding around, which is so funny. And they rented out like the what do they call it? The eye or the big Ferris wheel.
hmm
I mean, they rented the whole thing out for us for like 4 hours and had the Raiders house band was there playing. And so it was a really big production and super fun, but also just so interesting to see what kinds of things the Slate engineers are thinking about. And they take a lot of feedback from admission folks about what new features we would like to see and things that we think could work more smoothly in Slate. And then they try to implement those every year. And I guess there's a way where you can go in, there's sort of like a Slate Reddit almost, where you can go in and upvote ideas that people have for improving the platform. And so whatever gets the most upvotes ends up being implemented if they can implement it. So yeah, it's a great tool for us.
yeah,
Um,
and I mean their satisfaction level is so high with everybody
yeah,
I talk to, and their service is great. But let's talk about
yeah.
some of the new
What
AI
might,
features that they're
yeah,
talking about, and are these ones that right now are going to be implementable if somebody wants to turn them
yeah.
on?
Yes, the ones that I think everything I'm talking about today is implementable right now. It just depends on each institution's sort of comfort level with them or how much time. I mean, it takes some time to work on these different features and to get them working in your Slate instance in a way that makes sense for your college. And we don't all have a lot of extra time on our hands, nor do we have money to pay someone to implement these. There are lots of outside companies that will help you implement them. So some schools are going to be more on the forefront of that than others. But some of these are things that you won't see on the outside as an applicant, but that we'll be doing sort of on the back end. So I'm just going to go. I have like my big packet. You can tell that I'm a Gen Xer because I printed out all of the all of the new updates to Slate because I need to have a piece of paper in my hand and be able to like circle it instead of scrolling through it, or I'll never find what I'm looking for. So the first one that is really interesting that I'm hoping I get to try this year is reader AI highlighting. So when we're in the Slate Reader, that's the place where we look at students' applications and evaluate applications. And we have the ability to go into a student's essay or on their transcript or anywhere in the file and highlight things that we want to make sure that the next person reading the file sees. And it's interesting with each iteration of reading, every time that the file is submitted, that highlighting color is different, right? So I can go back and see if 3 other folks or 3 teams have looked at the file before me and they've all highlighted something. There'll be like pink highlighting, yellow highlighting, and green highlighting, and each of them is from a different time that the file was looked at. But what Slate is offering now is AI highlighting. So you can open up a file and click the AI highlighting button, and Slate will highlight things for you that it wants to make sure that you don't miss. So I think that this might be available to me now. I'm not positive. I know it's available to our leadership team, and I know that they're playing around with these different features. We're just starting to read for our fly-in program, so I have about 40 files that I need to read for that this week, and so I'm going to be playing around with this and see if I can access the highlighting tool and see if how it compares to how I would be highlighting. Because sometimes when you're trying to fly through a file, it is nice to have some of the most critical parts already highlighted for you so that it draws your eye to where you should be looking. I'm also like not 100% convinced that it's going to be good at it yet, right? So this is not something we're going to rely on at all. This is just a function that we're kind of playing with to see whether it's going to be helpful or not.
So I think I know the answer based on what you just said, but I want to ask it anyway. Do you have any input at all into what it highlights? Like you program in and tell it, these are some of the things that were important to us and therefore, or does it just use either its collective aggregate, input from working with so many schools and kind of do it on its own?
That's a great question. So you definitely can have input. Like I can type into Slate, highlight all the math and science transcripts or highlight all the math and science classes on this transcript. So in that way, I can have input on what it's going to highlight, and it may or may not catch them all, right? Like there might be classes that have sort of unusual names that it won't catch. So obviously I need to be there also looking for all the math and science classes and highlighting the ones that I want to be pulled out of the transcript. And then I think on the essay side, I think it's a little bit more like the way that we might use ChatGPT, where we're relying on it to choose what sort of stands out. And so from what I understand, like we don't like that part is already programmed and we don't get to create a prompt for that. Although I think you probably could say like highlight every place where the student says soccer, right? And it'll highlight them all if you want it to do that. That I wouldn't find to be useful, but maybe there are times when it would be useful, kind of like using a find function in Microsoft Word or something.
I am very curious whether that ends up being something that's helpful or distracting.
Yeah.
Because it's going to draw attention to it. And if it's drawing attention to something that
is not useful.
Yeah, then that would be more distracting.
Right. Yeah. So then we go back to the old human way of
Right. But if you're kind of like, well, it kind of is doing a good job of, letting my eyeballs go to something I don't want to miss.
Right.
Then, so you'll have to report back to us on whether the staff, and do you plan on using that this year in reading?
I think that's still undecided.
Okay.
I think leadership is playing with these different AI features while we're reading for our fly-in program, which is a funded campus visit program for under-resourced and marginalized students. So I think that I know that they are playing around with it there, and they've been disappointed by some of what they've seen. And then I think other aspects of it they've found to be useful. So we'll see. We don't have reader training until like the second to last week of October is when we train for reading the rest of the year, because we really start reading the last week of October since our first deadline is November 1st. So I think by then we on our side will have worked out some of the kinks and understood what's going to be useful and what is not useful yet. And then we'll be given sort of guidance on what we can use, what they've given us access to, and what we don't have access to as readers.
Could you tell, was there like a level of enthusiasm amongst counselors about this new feature? Or were you able to get a pulse on the room on that, or not necessarily?
On the college side? On the college side. Yeah. I think everybody's really excited about anything that will help us to read more efficiently without losing the sort of human part of it, right? I think everyone is skeptical and also excited about the idea. And we know that this technology is changing so rapidly that probably, between now and the time that we actually start reader training, there are going to be improvements to it. But certainly over the next few years, I can see this changing significantly.
So you mentioned a few. So this is one.
Yeah. So right? That's one of them. Yeah. One that you're going to see on the outside, and I think you'll see this implemented relatively quickly are AI chatbots. And this is something that you see with, any big business that has a website, has a way to chat, and it starts out with a chat bot. And so we have to train it with what's something called snippets, which are like answers that we've pre-scripted. And we have to train it by showing it what we want it to pull from on our website, and sort of I don't know. There's a lot of information that we have to feed into a chatbot in order to get it to pull the right information out from our website. And then there's some point when a student or a parent will ask a question that is not something that the chatbot can answer, and then they'll be directed to send us an email, right? Because that's how we get them in touch with a human. So I don't know when we are going to be I'm sure at some point we will implement chatbots. I don't think it'll be in the next year. Gosh, we've had a project to overhaul our website in our project management tool since 2022, and we still haven't even started. So these things take a long time because we're all so just sort of overwhelmed with the amount of work that we have to do. And the chatbot part obviously falls into comms, which is my area, and we haven't even started talking about it yet. So, but I think that there are other colleges that are probably moving more quickly on this and implementing this quickly. Another part of it is that CC is still working to iron out its own philosophy on AI. And we do things very deliberately and thoughtfully, and we pull in lots of voices and try to think about it from a 10,000-foot perspective. And so we, as an institution, are moving slowly on these things. So it's not a huge priority for us to implement something like this. But I think that you'll find that there are going to be colleges when you're on their website who have implemented the chat bot feature. And I think that it will be really helpful for finding things on their websites, for being able to ask questions about financial aid. I think it'll be especially helpful, or about majors and programs and those kinds of things. So I see this as being a real upgrade for lots of colleges.
So this is not so much responses to emails. It's more like when someone's on someone's on the website, like what would trigger, is there like chat,
there'll
like
be
just
like
a box that says chat?
Yep,
like
there'll
that?
be like a little pop-up in the bottom right-hand corner, I'm guessing, that says, do you have a question, right? And you enter your question in there, and AI is going to put together a response based on the information, either that it's been fed and taught, or that it can find by crawling the institution's website. And it will be limited to looking for information only in places where we tell it that it can look for information, so that it's not hallucinating or bringing you misinformation from College Confidential or Reddit or whatever. So I think that because it's going to be sort of limited in scope and how it can answer questions, I think it has the potential to be really helpful to students and families. So we used to talk about, Mark, how you shouldn't ask a question that you can't find within 3 clicks on the internet, right? Yeah. But this gives you the opportunity to, instead of searching for something that might be hard to find, it gives you the opportunity to ask the chatbot and get answers from it. And then you don't have to feel like, gosh, I don't know if this is an okay question to ask a person. And if it can't find the answer, then you'll be pushed to a person. And then okay, this obviously isn't an easy answer to find. So it's okay to be asking a person this.
I really see a lot of good use for that when it comes to requirements, because I'll get asked that all the time, is the custom prompt out? What is it? Yeah. Because sometimes it's even hard to find even in Common App.
Totally.
Do you want a resume? More and more, it's not a large number, but it's a noticeable number of schools are going, and none of us like this, to once you apply, you get the portal and then you get another question. That's something that some of my families like to know ahead of time. Am I going to get another question once I apply? So, I mean, I don't know if that's the best example. It is an example, but I see, here's another good one. So I have this big spreadsheet that I give all of my families for putting in all their custom prompts. So it has basic stuff in there like you'd expect, like name of school, exact wording, due date, max word count, how are you going to apply, EA, RD rolling, and then there's a spot for date you've completed it. But I have 2 other boxes in there that some colleges have on their website and some don't. One is material submission date, which can be different from. It's really not that important, but sometimes people like to know. The other one is kind of important to people, which is notification date.
Yes.
Notification date, day I find out.
Yep.
And those are, I'm just thinking of things that
Yep. I
my
mean, those are
families
all
would love
things.
to, like these are things
Yeah.
that sometimes it takes my family's time on the website
Right.
looking.
Yeah.
And
It can
and
be,
even
and
me,
because
it takes me time too when I'm looking for it.
yes, and because every college's website is organized differently, it can be hard to find those things. But I think the chatbots will come in really handy there, and then you don't have to wait for a response from the admission office. And the admission office can be busy doing more human-centered things, right? More relational kinds of things, because a computer can answer that question for you. So I think it will be really valuable in that way.
I mean, that's valuable use of AI, right? Because
Yeah.
that's potentially saving work for your team.
Yes. And it's
then it's
not
making it more
replacing a
efficient.
person on our
Right.
team. It's making space so that they can do the job that they have that can't be done by computers. They can do that better. They can do it more effectively, I think.
Yeah, and
Oh,
then and I'm always looking for everything like, okay, is this a win-win? Like that's always the way I
yeah.
think, right? So that's how it helps you, but it's definitely as long as you get accurate answers,
Yep.
that's a great thing for the family rather than waste. I spent 15 to 20 minutes, I still never got my answer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Okay, I'm paging through my document
Notes.
here. Yes, and I'm seeing lots of things that you guys aren't going to have to deal with, but here's something that is not AI related that you might want to know about. So there are some colleges who have the option to do a video essay or sometimes like an AI interview that goes through Slate. And now there's a feature where we can do attempt tracking. So if you try to record your video 25 times and you re-record it 25 times, we'll be able to see how many times you did that. So I think the idea is that we really want your first or second or third take. We don't want you to spend, like, if a school is asking for a 2-minute video that's just authentic about you, we don't want you to make a living off of this. This is not becoming a career. It's just record the video and be done with it. And so we'll be able to see that, which I think is good for students to know.
No, I think it's especially helpful if there's some language that says
yes
that too.
It'll be really interesting to see colleges
incognito and not
yeah,
tell
it'll be
anybody,
really interesting to see how colleges talk about that. We don't have a video on ours in our application. Maybe someday we will, but we don't right now. And so who knows how many schools are actually going to use that and how they'll describe that. But we can see if they're using it. They can see how many attempts you make.
Going off on a tangent a little bit, but glimpse videos kind of have been, taking off. What's the talk when you talk to other people? Do you talk to other admission officers at all?
I haven't asked them about it. I will say in our office, we have really liked the glimpse videos that we got last year during QuestBridge. There's been, as far as I know, I haven't heard any talk in our office about making that available to all of our applicants. But it's interesting because we really enjoy watching the ones that we've gotten for QuestBridge. So
do you just feel like it sometimes gives you just a slightly different, dimension into understanding somebody?
Yeah, I think so. I think the ones that I watched, maybe not even slightly different, but it emphasizes something that I feel like I already learned about them from the application, maybe draws that out a little bit more, kind of in the way that recommendations tend to do, right? It highlights something that I may have seen, but gives it more emphasis. Yeah.
Any other Slate AI stuff?
Yeah. So with the sort of video part of AI, they've created something called AI interviews. So I know at CC we have this, I can't remember what it's called, but we have this platform that our students can use to practice interviewing. And there's an AI interviewer on the other side, and it just gives them an opportunity to practice as much as they want to for like internships and jobs, right? Well, so Slate has come up with an AI interview opportunity for students where you can interview without having another person on the other side of it.
And is this something that would go into the admissions file potentially?
Yeah, I think
it's almost like replacing a senior fellow or something like that, like a lot of schools are using.
I think that's the idea, because there are a lot of schools who have way more demand for interviews than they can actually offer, right?
Yeah.
And so perhaps a school would say, if you aren't able to get an interview with an alumni in your area, then do this instead so that we can still have an opportunity to hear from you. So this isn't a thing that we're planning on using right now. I don't know if we will ever use it, but I can see a use case for it from schools that are overwhelmed by requests for interviews from students.
Well, I know one thing. If you never said another word, I think you've clearly showed the whole idea of nobody's using AI in
Hmm.
admission process is not correct anymore, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
nuance. There's a lot of
Yeah.
nuance,
Yeah, it really
and
depends on the school. And
depends
like
on the
MIT
school.
has definitely been using AI for the last few years at least. And so I'm sure that every school is going to be thinking about this differently, just like we all have sort of different philosophies on AI use generally.
Yeah, which is going to be complicated for students because they have to learn the different philosophies of
Yes.
the different
Yeah,
schools
it's a
on their
lot.
list.
But you know
You
what?
know?
We were talking about this in an AI
Uh-huh.
session that we did with our counselor advisory board the other day. Someone who's on like in charge of our AI steering committee came to chat with them about AI, and we were talking about how it's there are schools that align better with some students' philosophies on AI than others, and that provides another dimension by which
Mm-hmm.
you might find fit and match at a
Yeah,
school,
that's a
right?
good point.
If you're a student who is gung ho on
Mm-hmm.
AI, you're all in, you just want to go for it, and this is what you want to do for a living, like you want to go to a school that's also like all in on AI. You don't want to come to a place like CC where we're slowly trying to find our way very methodically and thinking about our philosophies on sustainability and on, just being human, right? Like it's been a very thoughtful process with a lot of voices being part of that here. That's very different from schools that are just jumping right in. And so we have a lot of students at CC um, who are opposed to AI use for ethical reasons right now because of the way that it was built, because there's racism built into AI, and because of the natural resources that it requires, all of that. And our students are thinking about that, and so is the institution because it's important to our students. And so if you're a student who is methodical about the way you use AI, then maybe this is a good match for you versus a student who really wants to jump in. That's another way to think about colleges, I think.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Just like, I will always tell people read those custom prompts and say to yourself, does this sound like a place that excites me? I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of times it's a tell right away whether or not I like the culture. You can see the culture by the questions,
Yep.
you know?
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, the University of Florida Honors College, they have an AI question this year for their
Hmm.
essay, and it's one of the harder essay prompts I've seen in a while. It's really, really something that my students are finding is confounding them.
Interesting.
Yeah, it really asks sort of for their philosophy of what does a responsible use of AI look like for you in your education.
Wow.
That's not an easy question,
Yeah.
you know?
No, it's not. But
Yeah,
I mean, I love that they're asking students to think about
yeah.
that because there are some students who are thinking about it and lots who are just jumping right in. So,
I mean, it's written in a way that is hard for some, because every time when people look at a question, they do try to figure out.
what's the answer they're looking for?
Yes, and this one is
Yeah.
really good at like not having any tell on
Mm.
that at
And
all.
I wonder if
Yeah,
there is a specific one that they're looking for, or if they just want to see students' thought processes,
yeah,
right? Like, I mean,
yeah.
so much of what we do in education is just try to figure out how students think and try to
Mm-hmm,
identify whether they're thinking critically about
mm-hmm.
something. And so, to me, that's a great question to identify a student's critical thinking ability.
I agree. Yeah, check out when you get off here. Go look it up.
Yeah,
Look
I'll
at
have
the
to look it
wording.
up. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay, another one that is going to pop up for folks on your side, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
students is AI identity verification. It sounds like there are lots of schools who have problems with people submitting like false applications where they aren't a real person or where they're pretending to be someone who they're not. So this is one of those verification processes where you take a selfie, you take a picture of your photo ID, you upload that photo, um, and then you have to provide part of a government ID number, like a social security number, or driver's license, or something, and it goes through a verification process to make sure that you are who you say you are. So I've had to do that for a few things. Like I think I had to do that when I got my global entry thing from the government, and I think when I got a new driver's license and I just ordered it through the DMV, I had to do that. But now it's coming to college admission.
Yeah, I had to do that to go on this cruise to Bermuda.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it like
Yep.
literally made you hold up your passport
Right.
and it takes a picture and then it
Compares
pre-populates
you.
it
Hmm.
pre-populates everything. It was kind of cool actually because kept me from having to type all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Friends, Slate's new feature that Hilary just talked about might get a lot more use. I don't know if you heard the story enough. Listeners sent it to me, but Yale had to escort a student out for fabricating all of their credentials to get into the freshman class. Fascinating story. So it's a Chinese student from the Bay Area who claimed she was from North Dakota, and everything was fabricated. The school she was at, obviously, recommendations, extracurriculars, testing, transcript, everything. And after, like a month or so of school, like the roommates started saying, this just isn't adding up. Like there's so much lying and prevarication going on here. Finally, she came to the conclusion that this student completely fabricated her way into Yale. So the roommate let Yale know. Yale did an investigation, found out the roommate was right, showed up at her door and said, pack your bags, young lady, because you're not going to be here anymore. So, yeah, this tool that Hilary talked about might get a lot more use. And by the way, there's already a lot of talk about our schools going to start doing more fact checking. The problem is they just don't have the staff to do it. Clearly, this isn't the only student fabricating things when it comes to extracurriculars. This was just an extreme.
All right. I guess the one other thing that we're seeing in Slate is the ability to do part of a transcript evaluation. So we can program Slate through very specific prompts to go through a transcript and look for grades, rigor, and the number of units that a student has. And every school is going to do that differently. This is, most schools are going to recalculate your GPA in one way or another. And so that is something that has the potential to really save us a lot of time and save a lot of perhaps money. Like we hire people just to do that work as temporary data processors. So we could put that money toward bringing more students to our campus through our fly-in program or something. It would be really nice. Right now, what we are seeing in our office is that Slate is doing some hallucination while it's evaluating a transcript. And so we're not using it right now. We're playing with it, but we're not using it yet. And I don't know how much of that is because we haven't dialed in the prompts well enough yet versus that the tool is just not up to the standards that we want it to be. But I think at some point, there is a possibility, and I'm not saying this year or next year or even the year after, but at some point there's a possibility that this will replace the SRAR, the self-reported academic record. I think that there is I can see a time on the horizon where students don't have to go through and enter all of their classes and all of their grades, and where counselors don't have to nag their students to do it or teach them how to do it correctly or any of that. That's a real pain. And that is something that AI is going to be able to do at some point. There will be some places where we have to make corrections. I can think of a handful of schools that I work with that have transcripts that are just hard to read, and maybe even states, right? We've talked on this podcast before. I think about how Florida sends you everything from kindergarten to 12th grade. So at some point, Slate will be able to do those transcript evaluations. And I think some schools might be already using that tool, and just the sort of mantra that I've heard is that you have to double check. You just have to go back and make sure, just like we do with humans. I mean, we have human data processors who also make mistakes on transcripts because they're not as familiar with the school as I am, and they might not know that like there's a school that I work with that has a geometry class that has some kind of funky name that you wouldn't know it's geometry, right? So I have to go through and make sure that that's marked as an actual math class. And we'll have to do that same thing with AI.
Would be delightful because right now you've got STAR, which used to be SAR, which is an outside like platform, even that lots of schools use it, especially a lot of larger schools. But then there's also the courses and grades feature on Common App.
Yeah.
So you can have a student that has to do the upload multiple times, depending on if a school's doing the STAR or the Common App, courses and grades. And then invariably there's something that comes up that's like doesn't fit nicely and they need help.
Yeah.
It's not, and so this stuff
My kids had a class, like their humane
Mhm.
letters class was
Yeah.
really hard. It was 2.5 hours every day. It covered
Mhm.
economics, history, English, literature. It was a lot to figure out how that was supposed to fit in. It was really hard in the UC's application. It was hard. I remember when Bryn was doing the University of Arizona application, it was really hard to figure out how to put that course in. And there are lots of schools that have weird classes like that are sort of hard to categorize, and they don't fit neatly into, any of the options that you're given.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the UC. So that's literally 3 places right there that are
Mhm.
pretty large platforms that a lot of people have. Like imagine doing that 3 times and then having,
Yeah.
some unique idiosyncrasy.
Yeah.
Cool. Did we cover them
Yeah,
all?
I think so.
So, I think the one thing that's great is when people hear AI in admissions, and I'll see it, they'll say it to me in kind of a frantic voice. The way people interpret AI in admissions is robots are making decisions instead of
Yeah.
humans.
It's so interesting that you say that, Mark, because I was just working with Ryan, who is the one sort of leading the charge on AI at CC, on how to think about AI use in the admission office. And so he started, because I happened to be at this session that he was running for our counselor advisory board, he and I were chatting afterwards, and he's like, well, I actually really could use some help. I have this template for how I want each of our divisions to think about AI use in their division, because it's going to be different for us compared to how it is in, advancement or whatever. And he said, if you could help get the ball rolling on this, I'd really appreciate it. So last week on Thursday and Friday, I spent several hours filling out this template that he has that is how we would like to or see ourselves using AI in the enrollment division. And one of the things that I added in there multiple times in different sections was that AI will never be used to make final admission or financial aid decisions. It just won't. Not in our office.
Yeah.
I don't see it being, well, I don't know. Maybe there are places where it could be if they're just going by GPA. But in our office, AI will never be used to make final decisions. It might be used to help along the way, but so much of the work that we do is human-centered, and we need humans to be understanding other humans in order to make the best decisions. But I think that, like, me putting that into that template in multiple spots was informed by the discussions that I've had with parents and counselors who are really fearful that AI is being used to make final decisions. And I just don't see that happening at Colorado College ever.
And most places, certainly European institutions and others, anybody that even claims in any way, shape, or form to be doing holistic admissions is going to say
and
that.
even places where it's admission by the number, that's just sorting, right? There's no AI involved in that. You can do that with an Excel spreadsheet.
Sure.
So it's not, that is a whole different sort of ball game where you don't even need AI.
Yeah. Point well taken. Thank you, Hilary.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Friends, let's hear Daniel Chambliss, author of the book, How College Works.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, in part 1, Dan explained why he wrote the book, How Colleges Work. And he explained the methods he used. And then we started out sharing his key findings. We continued to listen to him share more key findings from his research in part 3 of 4. Listen and enjoy. So you also talk about several steps that students can take to increase their odds of getting the benefits of full engagement from a college. One of the ones you say is start meeting people right away. Why is this so important?
Yes.
Why is it so important?
It's important to meet people right away because networks are multiplicative. If you meet somebody early, if I make a friend and that person has 5 other friends they introduce me to, and then each of those has 5 more, pretty soon you're getting to meet a lot of people. If you don't meet many people early, you can get isolated. And the trend in residential colleges is that early friendships, reasonably early, tend to stick. That is, you get involved, you get a crowd of people you're comfortable with. Great, and that's it. And it's relatively hard to break into one of those later if you're a transfer student, and it's relatively hard to break out of them for that matter. I tell you, well, yeah, okay. Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. It's interesting because my 29-year-old, her best friend, other than her sister, they're very close. My oldest went to Davidson College.
Yeah.
Similar to, in a lot of ways to Hamilton,
Good.
right?
Yeah, sure.
Her best friend, in fact, she's with her right now in New York. She met in the first 3 days during like an orientation program.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fortunate. That's really fortunate.
And my 26-year-old, her best friend, she met in the first semester.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like this, now they've been out of college. So I see how, just on a parent level, I've seen it with my own kids.
Yep. Well, we'll get to the downsides of that in a few minutes.
Yes.
I'm sure. But
yeah, no. We got some of that to cover.
But generally, you want to meet people early. Don't lock yourself in your room. Don't do the apartment dorm thing, play video games your first week in college. That's a terrible idea. And the nice thing is everybody else is eager to meet friends too. That first few weeks, people want to find folks to hang out with. So if you're willing to, take a little initiative on it, it has big payoffs.
Another one of your points is pick teachers over topics. Yeah. I think that's probably similar to when I was in grad school and a professor said, remember, the professor makes the class, not the topic.
That's right.
Keep that in mind. And it stuck with me. And I started taking some of the people I really, really liked a lot a third and fourth time.
Yep. That works. And you should know from a lot of research, not just ours, is that mentorship, if you can find a mentor, an adult advisor who really helps you and you can trust and so on, mentorship is probably one of the biggest factors in post-college success. It's very powerful. If you have a mentor, like a serious, adult advisor during college, it multiplies your life chances down the road. It multiplies your chances of success in all kinds of areas.
Yeah, I've some of the schools that have like mentored undergraduate research.
Yeah,
I try to tell people this is golden. Like there's schools like College of Worcester, Occidental. Oh, you got some thoughts about that?
I got thoughts about it.
Okay.
The problem is assigning a mentor doesn't work. It's like saying it's good to be in love.
Sure.
So we'll just assign everybody a lover.
Right.
It doesn't work.
So what I'm hearing you say is mentorship's great when the student has some agency in picking their mentor.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so what the school can do is provide opportunities for that. And so mentored research, that's great. Go for it, do it, live it up, whatever.
But normally when I see mentored research, like the student has some say. They don't just get assigned.
No, that's right.
They approach someone.
That's right.
And really, I've enjoyed your class.
That's right.
It's usually happening junior year.
Right.
And they've already had a class with them or whatever.
That's
and
right.
then they're like, would you be willing to be mine? That's what I normally see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what you said, College of Worcester and all is famous for this sort of thing. Yeah, there are a number of places that do a lot of it. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Teachers over topics.
Well, and it's not that you just ignore the topics you're interested in.
Sure.
But if you're picking, let's say, 4 courses for a semester, you've always got that 4th course hanging out there. You say, well, what am I going to do for the 4th one? I would say try to find one with somebody who you know is a good teacher. And once you start taking them, it's not your 4th course anymore. It's just one of your courses. And it might turn out to be a surprise hit.
So, Dan, you also tell students pick your places. What do you mean when you say pick your places? What does that mean?
Well, that kind of goes back to the architecture point we discussed a little earlier. Your physical location has a big impact on the people you meet, has an effect on meeting people. If you start, let's say you're sitting there with your laptop working on some course or something, and if you hang out in a location where there's a lot of traffic going by, you're going to see people, right? If you hang out, you always have your favorite chair in the campus coffee shop, you're going to start getting to know the people who work at the campus coffee shop, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're there at the same time every day, you'll see the same people go by. After a while, you say, "Oh, hi, hi, hi." Yeah, next thing you know, you're chatting away and you got a friend. Um, Fun example of this sort of thing, the impact of this. There was a guy named Marvin Bower back in the 1960s who basically built McKinsey, the consulting
Mm-hmm.
company,
Mm-hmm.
into the powerhouse it is. And one of the earliest things Marvin Bower did is he moved his residence to a big apartment complex where he knew a lot of potential clients lived. And he hung out at the swimming pool, right? And pretty soon you're chatting with the next person over, and then they say this and they say that. Oh, if you talk so and so, next thing you know, you've got a client, right? So it's that kind of logic is try to physically be where people you want to meet are going to be. We all did this in high school. You got a crush on some girl or something. She takes such and such a class. And then you always plant yourself there, but it's that kind of logic.
I don't know if you're familiar with Elliot Felix. So he wrote a book called How to Get the Most Out of College.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I've had him on the podcast before.
Uh-huh.
He went to MIT, majored in architecture, started an
Oh, yeah.
architecture firm, and pretty big size firm. And
Yeah.
their whole thing that they do is work with colleges on how to
Great.
spatially arrange
It's great.
your settings to maximize the learning experience. It sounds
Absolutely.
it sounds like it's exactly what you're talking about.
It is. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's great. It's
Yeah.
a great idea.
Yeah,
Yep.
something that I think
people
the
don't
average
notice
person don't even think about.
Have no
the
idea.
importance of the intentionality of planning in spaces like that.
I'll give you another example. The
Mhm.
college I went to, New College in Sarasota, Florida,
Mhm.
had dorms designed, a dorm complex designed by I.M. Pei, who's
Mhm.
quite a famous architect. And the main walkway through the middle of the campus was surrounded by a wall, a low wall.
Mhm.
And that wall is the perfect height to sit on. And this is in
Wow.
Florida, you understand? So the weather's always good. And what would happen is people would finish lunch and they would go out and they would sit on the wall. And after a while, it got to be kind of a thing where people would say, "Hey, you want to sit on the wall?" And then they'd start sitting on the wall. And the next thing you know, after a few years, people started just referring to having a wall.
Wow.
Like it was kind of a party. You'd go sit on the wall. Everybody walks past. You say hi to people. You meet people. And it became a big part of the social life at the college is sitting on that wall. And I thought, if this thing were 6 inches higher, it wouldn't exist. It wouldn't matter at all. It wouldn't do anything. It'd be a disaster. Or 6 inches lower. But somebody thought to make that wall the right height, and it matters.
I'm embarrassed to say this. I've been doing this for 25 years, but I don't think prior to 5 to 7 years ago, I gave this much thought.
No.
My consciousness has been awakened by talking to people like Elliot Felix, you. I feel like I'm shouting out College of Worcester a lot today, but we had Jenny Griffin on our podcast, and she's over sort of all of the student support programs there. But she talked about how they arranged everything so that they're in the same physical space.
Yes.
So when you come in, the same place where you're getting your advisoring, your tutoring,
Yes.
you're gonna meet, multicultural affairs or internships and career support, and just having everybody there.
Yep.
Out of sight, out of mind, but having people meet them in those connections.
Absolutely. Multi-use spaces. Yeah. Jane Jacobs talked about this in Death and Life of Great American Cities back in the foundational document in urban planning. Is that those principles work. There's no doubt about it.
Now, you also talk about join high contact activities. Students, that's something you need to do. Talk about that more.
Well, by high contact activities.
Speed dating?
Speed dating. No, but it can lead to that. What you want is to be in a group where you see the same people over and over again. A group of, we say, 20 to 80 people. Okay. Fewer than that, you don't meet enough potential friends.
Mm-hmm.
But 20 to 80 is a group that's large enough that you have a lot of options, but small enough you actually get to know everybody. So, easy example would be a choir, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
In our research, we found the choir was a phenomenally great place to meet other people, to make friends, because you'd see them if you joined the choir, they took in 20 students each year, so it'd be about 80 over
Mm-hmm.
4 years. You would spend several days a week with the same group of people over and over, and you get to meet them and get to know them. Sports teams
Mm-hmm.
work very well this way,
Mm-hmm.
obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Dormitories of the kind of configurations we were talking about, like if you live on a dorm with a long hall and a shared staircase,
Mm-hmm.
so you walk past several floors going up and down, and you see the same people over and over. It's a great way to make friends. So that's what we mean by high contact. It could be places as well, but activities, yeah, high contact activities.
And the 20 to 80 makes sense. So
Yeah.
if it gets to, like, you start getting to 300 to 400, you lose the sense of
Right.
community.
That's
and you
right.
get below
Exactly.
the 20 and you don't find your people. You might be, like you kind of said, your daughter
Well, like
joining the music group, but none of the people have what I have in common. Is that kind of the
right,
idea?
right, exactly. One example might be like a golf team. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's great. Go
Mm-hmm.
for it. Do it.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck. And you have a shared interest, but there are only like 8 people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the odds of finding a really good friend kind of go down. But it's fine. I mean, do it.
And the last major point that you emphasized for students was keep some options open socially and
Yes.
academically. Talk to us more about
please, please. Okay. The problem is if you commit, sometimes before you even get to college, to a major or a program or anything like that, you might get there and it's a dud, right? It might not be a good program, or it might be you can't do it. This is a big problem classically with pre-med students, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be pre-med, and they
Mm-hmm.
take everything their first semester,
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly they discover they can't do chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Now what do? I feel like I'm starting over again. Engineering, it happens all the time
Mm-hmm.
that students get in and they discover, the calculus is just killing me. And they can't imagine doing anything else. And that's a life problem. You've got to be able to say, look, there are other things I could do. I have a friend who advises students in an engineering program, very good program. And he says a lot of his work is helping them realize there is a life outside of engineering. And you could do other things that are engineering related, that are close to that, but don't require you to spend 3 semesters doing calculus. So keep your options open. A lot of times students go to college thinking, say, I want to do psychology. And it turns out college psychology is kind of not what you thought it was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Or English, English lit in college, they don't do it the way they did in high school. It's a different kind of thing. And you just want to be aware of that. And I say, keep your options open. Socially, I'll say just real quickly, it's important because you don't want to get locked into a group of people and not be able to get out. We saw in our research a group of guys, it was men in this case, who came in playing a certain sport. They joined the fraternity that was closely tied to that team,
Mm-hmm.
and then they blocked their dorm rooms. So they all lived together. Well, that was fine for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And about the 3rd year, a lot of those guys started getting real unhappy, said like, I'm limited. I don't know anybody new. I'm seeing the same people all the time. I got to get out of this. How do I do this? And they got sort of frustrated. So again, keep your options open. That's all.
Did your research have a large enough sample size to look at either why kids drop out or reasons why kids are disgruntled and malcontent? Did any of
Yeah.
that surface, and what kinds of things?
Well, I
showed
mean,
up?
if you're talking nationwide, a big problem, of course, is money.
Sure, of course.
I mean, that's a big factor for a lot of people, or family obligations of one sort or another,
Mm-hmm.
or they drop out of a particular institution because they're unhappy, which
Mm-hmm.
is to say, usually it's because setting aside individual
Mm-hmm.
psychological issues, but because they can't find friends.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be the killer. And it's a killer, you know.
No, this is something that I experience all the time with students. Like, so many times, if they are unhappy, and I'm talking about particularly
Mm-hmm.
within the first 30
Mm-hmm.
days,
Yeah.
once they find friends, everything changes.
Everything changes. That's exactly right. And usually they find friends because they do something different. Like they join. I knew somebody who joined a rugby team who was a very
Mm-hmm.
unhappy student her first
Mm-hmm.
year. She was really smart, did
Mm-hmm.
great in classes, very unhappy. And she met somebody who was on the rugby team. Now, this girl I'm describing was not an athlete, let me
Mm-hmm.
tell you. And
Mm-hmm.
rugby is pretty rigorous. But she joined and she said, I was never a good rugby player, but I made some friends. Everything's great. Right?
Yeah.
And she had a great college experience from then on.
So it's easy to tell students find friends. When you're talking to an institution and you're looking at it from a standpoint of what we can do to increase our students' satisfaction, retention, besides beef up people's financial packages for the money reason, are there things colleges can do to
That's a good
help
question.
people to find friends? Like, if you
That's
were,
a good question.
what would you say if you were speaking that
Well,
way? Mm-hmm.
I would say, for one thing, just telling them about the dormitory problem might help some, just trying to get them to realize there are some benefits to
And when you say problem, I
you know.
mean, don't just go for apartment style
Exactly.
isolation.
Exactly. That
Mhm.
is a tough sell. I understand.
Yeah.
And I've talked to plenty of student life departments about this kind of problem, but that's one. Making it easy to join various activities
Mm-hmm.
is certainly a plus. When you have these fairs where, you can sign up for this club or that club or the other, those obviously help a lot. The architecture stuff we've talked about, trying to make sure that traffic flows go through central locations, that kind of thing matters. But yeah, I don't have an easy answer to that one.
Implicit in, I felt, your whole book, Dan, was the case for the residential college, though, because almost all the magic happens in the context of interpersonal relationships, as opposed to just taking a MOOC or online courses. I'm not saying there's not value to that, but I would think that you would not see that as a substitute for the residential experience, or what happened during COVID. A lot of that type of teaching. It doesn't seem like that's consistent with what you're championing in your book.
Well, and what happened during COVID?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know what happened during COVID. The whole world knows what happened, is that it wasn't good. It wasn't good because people weren't getting face-to-face contacts with other people. Mm-hmm. And you could just see, learning plummets. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't plummet because people are more stupid with COVID, it's because they learn better together. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I'm obviously a big booster of residential colleges when they're done well, which is not to say everybody has that option.
Sure.
I mean, a lot of people don't. And so the question is, how do you introduce some elements of that into, online learning or MOOCs or what have you? Mm-hmm. But in general, I think there's no question. I mean, that's one thing COVID basically proved, is that face-to-face contact is very powerful, and that emotional engagement has a profound impact on learning.
Now, one of the things that you said, and one thing I love just about your writing in this book, is you call it like you see it. Like, you're not afraid to take on some perspectives that may be not the standardly embraced perspectives across the country.
Well, I hope we were fair about it.
You had good tone, but you did it. Like, you were bold.
Okay.
And I thought it was good. And so I want to talk about a couple of them.
Sure.
One of them, you clearly seem to feel as if when colleges want to make systemic changes,
Mm-hmm.
they put way too much emphasis on investing into their strategic plans and
Yeah.
thinking that's going to be a panacea to
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
fix their ills. So talk about that a little bit more.
Well, okay. Strategic plans basically happen because there's a new president or a new dean, and they feel like they got to do something big and dramatic. And trustees love this sort of thing, and regents and so on. And so they announce their big plans, and they spend a lot of time with committees and so on talking about it. The problem with plans is they aren't the same as making something happen. Like, I mean, it's fine to work up some strategy, but people have to do it. And I've seen a lot. I've read scores of them closely, and I would even say hundreds of them, because I did this accreditation work for 6 years, and I reviewed a lot of institutions, and I visited a lot of places. And from what I've seen, I don't know that I've ever seen a strategic plan that by itself accomplished anything, except making the trustees feel like, oh, the president's doing something. And the problem with them is not that they're bad ideas, it's that a plan gets announced and it counts on hundreds of people doing stuff, like carrying out some new directive. But they have their own ideas of what they want to do. And it probably isn't your plan. And so they're going to just keep doing whatever they've been doing. And it's very hard to motivate people, and somebody's got to oversee it. And it's just, I don't know, there's a lot of hubbub for not much payoff is what it seems to me. Just speaking empirically.
You know, I interview a lot of senior admissions people on my podcast, and I've interviewed quite a few people with 40 and 50 years experience. I just like to get their perspective, sage wisdom's been at 4 or 5 institutions. And probably 4 years or so ago, I interviewed Arlene Cash, who has been doing this for 50 years and has been at 11 institutions. So I never had anybody, I think that it even been at more than 7. And we were going over like what to look for and this, that, the other in a school. And she has a lot of experience. And so I said to her, like, how important are strategic plans?
Yeah.
And she was very similar to you.
Yeah.
She was like, in my opinion, they're overrated, because as soon as the leadership comes in and changes, then they go in another direction.
They go in another direction. That's exactly right. I think the Reagan administration really put their finger on it when they said personnel is policy. The people you hire, that's what's crucial. Spend your time on that rather than thinking about some abstract policy. You'll then hand them some binder and say, do this. Forget it. They're going to be themselves. So you've got to make sure you've got good people in the jobs. That's way more important.
A couple other things you talk about as being overrated. One is pedagogical innovation.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that.
Well, for an individual professor, I mean, I certainly did it. Every so often you should look around and see if you're doing it right. And if it's not working, try something different. Okay. So innovation is fine. I don't have anything against it. It's just that students don't care. They've never seen the stuff in the first place. They don't want innovative. They want good. And if you've got a teaching method that works well, then great, go with it. I just don't see any benefit. It reminds me, there was an old joke about a calculus professor said, I've been doing this for 40 years and they still don't get it.
That's a good one. I like it.
So the message in there is that, again, you want students to have a good experience, and however you get there is fine with me. I just don't see that innovation per se really matters.
And another thing you talk about that I thought might be controversial. I don't know if you say these exact words, but I certainly got the impression that you were saying curriculum is overrated.
Absolutely.
Yeah, talk to us more about that.
Yeah, you're right. We should have just said it explicitly. Well, here's the thing to notice. There's St. John's College
Yeah.
in Maryland, right?
Yeah.
It's a very traditional, super conservative, very strict, very structured liberal arts program. Is a curriculum, right?
Yeah.
And other schools have
Great
a
books.
totally open curriculum where you can study anything you want. And the United
Hamilton
States
is known for that. Hamilton's known for being open.
has an open curriculum, right, within a liberal arts framework.
Yeah.
But we don't offer engineering or nursing. So,
Right.
United States Military Academy has its. I mean, there are all kinds of different curriculum out there, curricula that work, beautifully in different kinds of schools. California Institute of the Arts, very different curriculum. I don't know. I'm not. You can have a successful institution with all kinds of different curricula. So in a sense, I don't know why people spend so much time. I mean, it's fun to talk about what students ought to be learning. But again, that's not the problem. The problem isn't the content. The problem is motivation. And you need to focus instead of talking about curriculum, why don't we talk about how do we get these students really gung-ho to do whatever it is we're offering?
Friends, this concludes this part of my interview with Dan Chambliss on his book, How Colleges Work. Hope you join us next week for the next part. Friends, let's hear from Lisa as she gives her impressions of St. Michael's College in Colchester, Vermont. There are a lot of changes happening at St. Michael's, and particularly when it comes to things like admissions and merit aid. And Lisa tells us about them.
And now it's time for our College Spotlight of the Week.
Hey, Linda, how are you?
Hey, Lisa. I am doing well back here in the Midwest, not gallivanting around college campuses like you.
Yes, and gallivanting we did today. It was another beautiful day in Vermont. It was 77 and sunny, and we saw 3 colleges in Burlington, St. Michael's and Champlain, and we also went to
That's a
UVM.
lot.
It was a big day. It was a lot. So, but it's a really interesting day because each school is very different, has very different niches and strengths, and you definitely felt like there are a lot of great educational opportunities here in Burlington, Vermont. So anyway, I thought I'd start talking about the first college we went to. We went to St. Michael's College in the morning. It's actually just right outside of Burlington and Colchester, but very, very, very close. And it is a liberal arts college with 1,100 undergraduates and about 200 graduate students. And those programs are like psychology and education. So yeah, so it's a very interesting school. And this isn't the most important thing about the school, but do you want to know what one of my favorite things about the school was, Linda?
I do, Lisa. Lay it on me.
It's because it's haunted. I love a haunted college. I love
There
that.
are ghosts.
There are ghosts in the college. I mean, I guess lots of students and alumni have talked about seeing them in various different places, but friendly.
I'm not sure this is a selling point.
It's just you are so negative about ghosts, Linda. I'm serious. It's like, oh, there's a ghost. It has to be bad. It could be a good ghost.
I'm not thinking Casper. My mind does not go to Casper. It goes more to, the Amityville horror kind of ghosts. So,
yeah,
but it sounds like maybe these
you could look at it that way.
Friendly ghosts. So, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, but other than the non-living, I'm happy to tell you about all the exciting things that are going on for the living people who are studying and working at St. Michael's College. So we had quite the group of people talking to us. So we spoke to the president of the college. We spoke to the provost, the director of admissions, or maybe director of enrollment, and then an admissions officer, several students, and they gave lovely tours. So it is a Catholic school, but it is kind of interesting because it is the only Edmondite school, Catholic school in the country. So, and I guess the Edmondites are a order that really focuses on service. And they have accepted they're done accepting priests into the order. So I don't know what happens.
What happens after? Yeah, that's
I don't know. See, this is where things just, my lack of religious education is a problem. But apparently, there's a priest who is very young who stays on campus with them. And so I guess after he dies, I don't know, like he sounds like he's in his mid 20s. After he dies, then.
well. I hope this young priest who's on campus, I hope he's eating his spinach and taking care of himself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we asked what's going to happen after that, and they're like, "What?" I guess we'll just still be at Edmondite College. But I definitely think that they've made a lot of changes in their upper management, and I think maybe the school is trying to kind of work its way out from financial issues, and also maybe anticipating changes coming up with the demographic cliff and things like that. But
Yeah.
their main purpose is they say that they are there for their students. They are a liberal arts institution and that they believe in providing students with transferable skills through developing critical thinking, problem solving skills, and empathy, as well as the ability to work as a team and to function in life in an ethical way. And repeatedly, they said that what you major in doesn't matter because the jobs of the future, we don't even know what they are. So they are preparing people by giving them skills that could be transferred to any kind of job and that will help them function.
Like those critical thinking
Yeah, they're
skills.
on the critical thinking skills. And, that is the main thing that they are trying to promote. They want the two questions that they want people to focus on are who am I? And that is not like finding yourself, but a realistic assessment of your strengths, weaknesses, and your values. And whose am I? Whom am I responsible for? And what do I want to be responsible for? Because they definitely feel like that, people should serve others as well as themselves. And that the emphasis on ethics is something that the college feels like is a little bit lacking lately, and that they really want to try to emphasize for students. It is a school, and they talked about this a lot. For your B student, they said, send us your B student, send us your kid who has got potential but hasn't been able to be a consistent academic performer, because we know how to turn those kids into extremely successful adults. And they do that with a lot of very intensive advising, which I can talk about in a second. And that it's residential for 4 years. So they, have a very close knit, it's a smaller campus, very close knit campus.
How many students are there?
1,100.
Okay, so it is tiny. Okay.
Yeah. And so 40% of those are athletes. It's a D2 school. But the athletes are very integrated in the rest of the college. There's no Greek life. But people repeatedly talked about how close knit it was. They have a 3-tiered advising system. So each student gets 3 advisors. The first one being an academic advisor who's very intensively involved in their major and their academic education and direction. They also have career advisors that they meet with from day one, who help them try to define careers, look for internships, and then jobs. Then each person is also given a success advisor, and that this person is somebody who helps them adjust to college. And also, I think is basically functions as sort of like an executive functioning support, helps them figure out how to get their homework done. Are they meeting all their expectations? The professors are very involved. If you miss class, you are going to get an email. Your advisor might get an email, and you are definitely going to be missed, and everyone is going to know about it.
Yeah.
So, and they have some very interesting, unique things. They're the only school in the country that has its own volunteer fire department and EMT department that is fully student run. Apparently the fire chief and the EMT chief are students. They are paid, but the rest of them are all volunteers, and they are trained, and they not only handle things, calls on campus, they handle calls in the surrounding area.
Wow.
So that is, I think, like a really good thing. They have, I should have written this down, like 240 acres is what comes to mind of land that's like across the street. They own a lot of this land, and they have an organic farm on it, which students can take classes on. They're building out much more of a sustainability program. They have a couple majors now, and we talked to the woman in charge of it, and she was telling us how they're adding all different kinds of sustainability focuses and majors to that. But our tour guide told us a really cute story about how she went out there and picked carrots, and she'd never picked a carrot before out of the ground, and how cool it was and how delicious a freshly picked carrot tastes. So, and they also are known for things like their business. They have an education major, psychology, and but again, the focus is really not even so much on the majors. It's more on developing the critical thinking skills. There's a lot of research the undergraduates do there that happens right away, because there are no graduate students to do any of the research. So, yeah, and then the guy who was in charge of, I think he's like maybe the interim director of enrollment, came and talked to us, and he had some really interesting things to say about how they're changing, how they're handing out aid.
Oh, so like merit aid?
Yeah, and basically there isn't any more merit aid, but here's what they're doing. So if you are an in-state student in Vermont and your family makes less than $100,000 a year, there's no cost for tuition. Your tuition is free. And so you just have to pay room and board. If you are a commuter, then I think the maximum tuition you would pay would be $11,500 a year. If you're out of state, they will look at your financial need, but even if you don't have financial need, they just automatically go to your state flagship and they match whatever that tuition is. So they're trying to make it as accessible to people as their state flagship. Now, somebody asked, the stumper question was, I live in DC, we don't have a state flagship. How much does it cost? And he was like, I don't know, but that's a really good question. I probably need to figure that one out like today. So there's no more merit aid. The cost is sort of whatever your state charges, and they're very upfront about that, but they're not doing the discounting otherwise. So they're hoping that simplified structure will help give people more clarity about how much the college actually costs, and that it'll, hopefully bring in more students. Thoughts?
Yeah, I hope that is true. And we know that is the benchmark for a lot of families who say, I'll pay for my state flagship, but I won't pay for the next state over their flagship. So, yeah, that would good for them. And I'm sure that does simplify things on their end and for families.
Yeah, and this is just starting with this class of 2026 that is applying this year. They've also moved to a rolling admissions model. So they do have I think they have early action, maybe early decision. I can't remember. All those schools are blending together now. And they have regular decision, but really if you earlier submit, they try to give you they roll them out in batches every 2 to 3 weeks. And I think their admit rate is maybe like 87%.
So pretty quickly.
They're trying to say yes more than they say no. And like I said, they look at their mission as to help kids who, maybe need a second chance academically and turn them into superstars. And it seems like they have a really good track record, because I think, 94% of kids are employed in their major or in grad school for something they want to study in 6 months. So they feel really proud of that, because they're not, getting the kids that were the most on top of it coming out of high school, and they're basically matching the outcomes of like Dartmouth to save numbers, for instance. So I think they feel really proud about that.
As they should.
Yeah, no, I think it's in a way, like they can make such an impact, maybe even more of an impact. Like if you have somebody who's already a superstar and you make them even more of a superstar, like the amplitude of that difference is lower, perhaps, than if you take someone who struggled and teach them how to function. So they also have an honors college. You're automatically considered for it. And there's honors housing, you do an honors capstone. But the interesting thing about the honors college is that they let you take a fifth class each semester at no additional cost. So that way, if you want to study abroad or you want to get done earlier or you want to have a double major, um, your college cost will be the same or less. And a lot of kids take advantage of that. So they have a lot of academic support services. They have all kinds of tutoring, all kinds of support. Some other things that they have is because the Edmondite values are about public service, in addition to the volunteer fire department, you can also volunteer at many organizations throughout the community. And they have an office on campus that is really active in planning like service trips, planning, liaisoning between local communities and their organizations. And so they have a lot of students participating in that. They're also really big in adventure sports. They are 30 minutes away from the nearest ski mountain. You can see the mountain from campus. They have a lot of different adventure trips. One that I'd never heard of and was slightly terrified by was ice climbing. So that sounds cold and dangerous, two things I don't like, but I could see that being fun for other people. And yeah, I thought it was just a really the campus was pretty. There were lots of plants, sort of a red brick, kind of some modern, some more traditional, but a very pretty quad. You felt very peaceful walking around. I thought it was really good. And for the right kid, I think it could be transformative. And I guess the thing that I was thinking about as I was walking around is like they offer a lot of the same things that High Point does in terms of that intense advising and taking a kid who maybe needs a little help or a second chance and making them into a success. But they do it in such a different way. There are no steak restaurants and things like that. And the emphasis is so much more on, public service rather than in business. But I thought like if you wanted the support of High Point, but certain aspects of it didn't fit in with your personal value systems or your family's value systems, then St. Michael's would be a great place to consider as an alternative, because it is a very values driven public service institution that also has that kind of support. So I really liked it. I think we were all very impressed by it.
It sounds like a true hidden gem. I really like that 4-year residential and that strong advising. And I think we're always looking for places for those B students, because isn't that what a lot of them are, where they have terrific outcomes. So it sounds like a great campus.
No, it was a really great campus and it was a lovely tour and they could not have been nicer to us. I think they're really trying to reboot their process of admissions, of marketing. And you could just see, but there was a lot of positive energy going into it. And I think, I don't know, I can't read a financial sheet, but I think I felt optimistic, like the people I felt like they had the right people doing the right things. And hopefully that they will be able to make a change and change the direction. But it would be a shame if something happened to them because they provide such a great product, honestly. So,
yeah. Well, fingers crossed. Lisa, thank you so much for sharing about St. Michael's with me.
Yeah, no, if you ever get to Burlington, I just highly recommend taking a look. And the kids said the weather isn't that bad. In fact, the president said it was always like this, 77 and sunny year round at St. Michael's, but he might have been joking.
Well, yes, or maybe he was possessed by that ghost.
That ghost, yeah,
the ghost.
I don't think it's true either. All right. Well, thanks for listening, Linda.
Thanks, Lisa.
Friends, on Monday's episode, Susan and Kate Strickland from the University of Colorado will join me. Kate gives her bio, so you will know a little bit about her background. Then we just had a lengthy conversation about the recent NACAC conference in Columbus. We ended up talking for over an hour because we just jumped around to a range of a lot of topics we think you'll find interesting. I just let the mic play because I was just thinking, I think you guys are going to like this. And so you'll hear part one on Monday, and then you'll hear the final part of that conversation on the following Monday. And then you'll hear the last segment of the admissions committee and their debate. You'll finally learn what student they decided to admit, waitlist, and deny. So that will be on Monday. We hope you'll tune in. And friends, I leave you with the words I left my daughter Joy when I dropped her off in the dorm. It was an emotional time. I just had this flashback, 30 years ago, like when my dad dropped me off at college, and I was ready to go. I mean, I've been going to summer camp since age 7. I was very independent. But his sister's son had gotten kidnapped right out of the streets and caught up in Children of God, sent off to Korea. So my dad drops me off, and he shows up 30 minutes later with a tear in his eye, and he's like, "Son, just thought you might need some light bulbs. So I went around the store and got you some light bulbs." I'm like, "Dad, I'm cool. You can go now. Love you. You can go." But these are the words that I left with my youngest daughter when I dropped her off. I simply said, show me the 5 people in your life that you spend the most time with, and I'll show you your future. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. And that's something worth thinking about. By the way, the phrase, show me your friends, and I'll show you your future, that's attributed to the great Greek philosopher Aristotle. So there's some wisdom there. See you on Monday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our international admissions expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stylionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.